all of those things, and now it's closing and reflection, and like Jari, you said, looking forward into what happens next. And yeah, this is becoming a routine for you as well. You always have the same format. We're looking back at the exercises, and then we go to the theme of the day. So yeah, you had last week, you had kind of the final exercise for those of you who did it. So you actually did a facilitation, and it was super interesting to read your reports. And just like usual, I have picked up what I thought was really good and insightful and thought-provoking comments. And one of the themes you wrote about in your reflection was just a basic, simple fact that having another pair of eyes to ask questions about your own job is actually very helpful. So make a mental note that perhaps the easiest thing to help you to make a better job is to ask somebody to ask silly questions and facilitate you in your own job, because pretty much everybody said that it was a good experience. A couple of things I picked up from your reports. One of you wrote, to have someone question your ideas and also the why behind your thoughts makes the final product so much clearer and ready for the people attending the workshop. Simple as that, you know. Just asking somebody asking you to clarify your own thoughts makes the end result better. The other person wrote, it might even be a big advantage and very helpful and valuable that the facilitator has no previous knowledge in the domain. And that's how you get kind of away from the biases, and you know, you get a very different perspective. So for all of those who, you know, thought about, oh, I don't know anything, or you know, maybe so junior, this other person is so experienced, it's just remember, this actually might be super good that you are actually totally ignorant of what's going on. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing if you are really good in it either. But I mean, just saying that it has its, like today, we're going to talk a little, that's about calibrating your role. In this situation, am I now a total ignorant who can ask silly questions, or am I the expert who's kind of giving advice that this is how I have done it before? And then somebody commented the next one that the additional coaching questions help. So yes, it's always good to have a checklist. Even when you are a professional, even when you have done facilitation for hundreds of times, having a checklist to make sure that you didn't forget anything is always a good and simple thing. The last one I picked up, because this was really good point as well, that one of you wrote that as a facilitator, actually the most interesting thing was to see how somebody else planned the workshop. So the facilitation in itself wasn't the most interesting thing, but it was actually that, hey, what kind of a workshop are they going to do? The actual content and the substance. So I think that was also a good reminder that, hey, actually, it is very, very interesting to see if somebody, how are they doing it? The actual stuff that you are facilitating. And of course, that's a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. Next big theme, picked up a couple of times. So can the facilitator tell their own ideas? How much can the facilitator go like, well, I would do it like this? And one of you wrote a really good point saying that, that Adore actually said that in this course, there had perhaps been an idea that the facilitator should be neutral. Well, the answer is it depends. And that's why I put it here, that you can bring your own ideas. Oops, sorry about that. That's my phone. So it's okay to bring your own ideas, because, you know, just in common sense, that if you have done the thing many, many times, why not bring your experience into the discussion? But as a facilitator, you perhaps have the responsibility to kind of ask a permission that, you know, you might go that, hey, I have done this a couple of times. Do you want to hear how I would do it? Or maybe use as an example, you know, hey, I remember a couple of years ago, I was in a similar situation. As an example, this is what I did then. So, and then most probably the other person is very open and very happy to get your ideas. So the facilitator can. And in I would say, if common sense says that, yes, go and help with the actual substance, then do it. But of course, like we've been talking whole course, be very mindful of your position. I'm going to get a little bit back to this later on.
And here,
So,
I say something here.
Yes,
I agree with you, but being very, in a way, careful how you tell your experience. It's asking permission. Would you like to hear? And so I had this experience, and it happened. What do you think about that? So it would be, is there something useful? And if the person will take, okay, I will do the same. Then you can take a critical stance and, okay, what did it mean? You can investigate that then. How could you use this experience or this idea? And so then adding own expertise or own experience as a resource, I think that's very valid. But how to do that in a way that you don't sell the idea, okay, or that the other person accept it easily, that okay, I will do the same. So and then being aware of that. So I think it's very, very important.
And I think you said it, the key is the way you put it just there, that your own expertise as a resource, which means that the other person still makes the decision whether they're going to use it or not. Yep. So that's a couple of points later about that as well. And then the third theme that popped up was that facilitation, partly it is easy, but actually it's also at the same time difficult. And it really, of course, depends on what kind of a person you are, what situation you are in. So like the first comment here, that I felt that I had a permission to ask even so-called stupid questions. And at the end of the day, my pair felt that these questions helped her really to think things differently. So I think the key here is that, you have this kind of role play, that you are in this course and you're kind of like, well, these teachers made me ask these silly questions. So that can be a very simple thing that actually is powerful, that you kind of have, okay, you decide with your colleague that I'm a facilitator now. And that just might mean that you have now a permission to ask silly questions, because facilitators can ask silly questions. So it can be little things like little social contracts like these. Another one you wrote, I started to ask questions which were marked in the lecture notes just before, during, and after. And that gave me good questions to ask in situation when I was thinking that I have nothing to ask anymore. So again, the checklist thing, that when you have used and asked your questions, then there is a good to have a checklist going on, like, okay, there was this thing to look at in addition. The third one I liked a lot. One of you wrote that everyone has biases, we all do, but facilitating others is a great way to get rid of them. That was really, I think, very insightful. Yeah, Jari.
Yes, I think this is very, very important point, but it's not just getting rid of them, but becoming aware of those, because we have so much unconscious biases as well, or thinking that and if somebody asking a good question, then we realize, okay, why I think that way, okay, yeah. And so that is very, very important and valuable contribution of facilitation, that we realize our own thinking and biases.
Absolutely. And then the last one, I think, is a very basic technique, is that you're kind of paraphrasing the other person's speech. Just like what Jari said, is that, so Jari, you just said that it's really actually good to be aware of our own biases.
Or try to understand that we have, and being curious that what kind of biases we have. So yeah, and I think that this curiosity is very, very, again, important. But we come back to later to this issue.
Good. But having going all these, I kind of hoping that when you did these exercises and you did the reflection with these, that actually what you started reflecting perhaps, and it looked like after reading your answers, was that it's kind of like, what is my role? What is my role in this situation? And then once you have so what's my angle here? What's my perspective? Where do I come from? And then maybe thinking, so what are my techniques? Last time we talked a lot about methods and toolboxes. So now I have my toolbox open. So what am I going to use? Is it going to be scissors today, or some other facilitation tool? And last but not least, what is your style? How are you going to work in this situation? Are you more like a silent person who asks questions, or are you more a coach, and so forth? So just as a summary to think that, and remind what's the difference between, facilitation and doing the thing, if you want to keep that really simple. So just based on this, the kind of hoping that after this course, you can see the subtle difference between these two, such as it's a different thing how you plan a workshop. That's what you did last week. But it was actually a very different thing of how do you facilitate the planning of a workshop. And here's the kind of the subtle difference between doing and facilitating somebody to do things. And then the other kind of subtle balance that was mentioned already is, are you an expert giving an advice, coaching somebody, or are you a neutral facilitator? And there is no right or wrong answer. It depends. It depends on you, in the context, in, what are you trying to achieve? And here's a couple of notes about the neutrality. I think, like I said, I think the facilitator can and should give their own opinions when it helps. However, be very mindful of the situation, especially the kind of the power relations there. Are you the owner of the business? Are you owner of the product? Are you a decision maker? Are you like clearly the most senior person there? Now, if you start bringing your own opinions, you should be very mindful of that. Are you blocking somebody else's views after that? And all of this is very, culture related. Very different thing to do here in Finland, or maybe let's say go to an Asian country in the Far East, and there are cultural differences of how we can facilitate and how should we play with the neutrality. Then the other balances mentioned here, are you focusing on the workshop only? How does the workshop mean? Or are you going to focus on the before and the after, the larger context of it? And then I hope the last thing that was you kind of started reflecting on the last exercise was that your role as a facilitator, and perhaps there was some really nice points made from you being facilitated, that how that actually opens up. And it was really good to be reflecting on you being facilitated. So as a summary, kind of like the exercise that, or maybe this whole course as a facilitator, when you go into these facilitation situations, then you probably either, you think about this, or maybe you do it intuitively. You start calibrating. So what's your expertise? What's their expertise? So what's my role going to be? Do you have an agenda? What is it? Do they have it? The participants have, or the facilities, do they have an agenda? What are your opinions? What are their opinions? How are you going to deal with them? What techniques and tools you're familiar with, but what techniques and tools they might be familiar with? And then you make decisions. And last but not least, it's your personality. So, what kind of a person you are as a facilitator, and what kind of personality they are. And is there something that, again, you should be aware of? The kind of basic questions of facilitation. And maybe all of this summarizes into the question that asking it, directly asking before the facilitation, what does the other person need from it? What's your objective? I'm here to facilitate you. What would you like to get out of this? How do you see me helping you here? And then you actually start negotiating each other's roles. Okay, so yeah, now I understand what you're looking for, and I'm looking for this, and can be a 5-minute conversation, and everybody knows what is expected. Good. Anything else, Jari, comes to your mind?
I think this negotiation part is always important, that we really ask, why are we doing this? And how is it going, and what was the outcome, and how was it helpful? And so this kind of reflective talk and sensing that our process is really serving the purpose and being helpful. So because we bypass this part easily in all other situations as well, that we just assume that everybody knows what we are doing and why we're doing that. But that's not exactly true in many cases, that we have these different bias, different interpretations. And in the facilitation processes or coaching process, I think it's very important to have this deal and acknowledge purpose and way of working together, and then evaluating as well.
Exactly. Any comments from the audience, or should we move to the next theme of this afternoon? Let's move on and see if anybody wants to comment anything about that. So the next theme soon we're gonna have 2 breakout rooms today. The first one coming up soon will be about you reflecting what was meaningful for you in this course. What did you learn? What stuck to you? And then after the break, the other breakout room is going to be you looking forward, you thinking about how will this change you? What will you do next? But first, this part, looking backwards. But let's have a look what we have done. Kind of a quick reminder to us all. So the subtle difference. The course objective. So we really aim to change your thinking about what is leadership, what are organizations, and how to facilitate change. And how this is, we hope that we have showed you it. It's actually very practical. There's a lot of repetition. And I think some of you were reflecting in the assignments already that, well, you kind of thought that this course was a little bit, superficial, but now after doing all these things, you can maybe see that, hey, this was actually going to the very basics of many, many things. Anyway, point being that this is not necessarily book knowledge. You need to experience these things. All the exercises were actually pushing you into social situations, and there the experience is hugely important. And the sociality means, of course, taking advantage that we are here. Like now, we are 134 people right now. That's an enormous resource that we should somehow use. And we hope that we managed to do that, and you managed to do that as well. You met every week a different person, and you kind of learned something. You maybe took something from those situations, and you gave a lot in those situations. And then, of course, we had a bunch of materials, links, tools, thinking for you. Lecture topics here again. We had started with the lenses, different lenses that we have, different perspectives, the uncertain landscape that fits into many of our situations. We talked about organizational transformations. That is a big thing and topic that we touched on. Then we went to the lean agile design world, which has been kind of as a one mindset or 3 mindsets in this case of changing how we do things and get things done. And we talked about shared meanings. How do we negotiate shared meanings? Then we had a facilitation more in depth, thinking about what is actually facilitation, what happens in a facilitation, and so forth. Last week, we looked at the toolbox, as I mentioned, and then a lot of little practical tips and tricks based on that toolbox. And now we are actually going to experience a little bit of reflection together. And then we had the exercises. And I hope you can see that, because there's actually a point. There's kind of like when you do all the 5 exercises, it hopefully makes a little bit more sense than the individual exercises. And there's like a thread through them. So you start with understanding the context, then you understand the temporal context, stuff come from somewhere, stuff goes somewhere. Then you clarify the goals based on understanding these 2 contexts. And then a little bit we did an exercise about listening, reflection, kind of, tuning yourself into a facilitator. And then last week's exercise was kind of, okay, now we have told you all these 4 things. How do you facilitate? And how are you being facilitated? So there was a point that each of these exercises more or less built on top of each other. So let's start. Let you start the reflection. So before we go to the breakout rooms, take a moment, maybe pen and paper or something, and think about like top 3 things that your own personal experience with this course. Now, as a whole, because we have gone through all the 5 exercises and the 5 themes, what do you think that was meaningful for you, and what are your key takeaways? So I'm going to give you a little bit over 2 minutes in silence, and then I'm going to throw you into breakout rooms, and you can share your thoughts with others as usual. Oops. Yeah, 2 minutes. Let's go. Okay, that was a little bit over 2 minutes. Time to start sharing, and sharing is caring. Annika, are we ready with the breakout rooms?
Yes, we are.
So let's go there for 15 minutes. I think that will be enough. Real case studies should be included for practical learning. That's a good point. The thing is, I guess that it would mean that Jari and myself would have to write those case studies because they don't exist automatically. Actually, at the end of today, I have a bunch of master's theses, mainly for our degree students there in the audience, that if you are interested in these topics can be addressed in a thesis. And many of them are actually case studies, so maybe they will help. But I mean, thesis is what, 50 to 100 pages, so it's not like it's relatively big. Somebody was a tourist and they're sorry that they missed the discussions. Yeah, that's a shame. That is a shame. Oh, it's coming close to 5 o'clock. And we know that 5 o'clock we're going to get a break. Jari, anything pops into your mind looking and reading at these before we go on a break? You're on mute, Jari.
Yeah, I was enthusiastic to start talking, but well, I think there was great feedback. I'm very happy that there is quite a lot of stuff that has been kind of ideas, tools, tips and tricks, but also more kind of awareness of this stuff, and maybe also this how to maybe continue, so that knowing new things, but also realizing that there's quite a bit of learning ahead as well. But so I guess it was very nice reading and good feedback. Well, I would like to interpret that it's been a useful course.
We'll ask you to fill up official feedback form as well. But
yeah, sure.
Okay, how about that break? 5-minute break. So let's continue 6 minutes past the hour.
Time to continue. Hope you had a good break and you're back. But now let's take next 15-20 minutes about meta skills and meta routines. And yes, Risto, I started already, so it's okay.
I counted on that.
Yeah. All right. So facilitators, meta skills, and meta routines. Few thoughts about those, and well, what are those skills and why they are needed? Why are we talking about those? And then other way, what other routines we are having? What routines we can call meta routines, and they're also what and why, and then how we can learn and improve both of these and how they are connected. So meta skills. So we can call this the meta skills somehow the skills that magnify or activate other skills. So they are something like higher order skills, and say they allow us to engage with functional expertise more effectively. So it means that it's something that when we know something, we can do something. Meta skill is something that enable us to integrate that with others, and so it's pretty much kind of well, communicating, collaborating, and such. But then it's also kind of skills that enable us to do better. So learning, building new skills faster, and in many ways we take this for granted because we all have these skills, and they are just ways to, well, in a way, be in the world in a meaningful way. But let's take a look why why these are even more important now. And when we talk about facilitation or this kind of leadership stuff and so on, so why this is even more important. But in general, as someone already said in chat, that there's world is changing. Well, it's kind of idea to say that even more, let's say, rapidly, but I think it's also changing in more diverse sets, and there's more uncertainty, discontinued disruptions around, and then we have more needs to adapt, more needs to make sense, more needs to learn and transform, and that way we can call these skills pretty much kind of meta skills or supporting skills. And of course, here we can say that when we talk about these skills, it's very blurred line. What is meta? What is just some ordinary skill? And so it's not so clear. And so, as I said, we all have reached a certain level of these skills to our life experience. So it's pretty much being in the world and acting with others and being able to adapt, being able to learn, and so on. And some of us are very, very competent in this already, very reflective. We're very kind of able to kind of learn from effectively or being very, let's say, contributive in different situations. And some of us are more robust in a way that we don't maybe acknowledge these social processes so easily and so forth. And traditionally, this has been kind of side effect. So not being a part of our education or university education, and there's more and more attention paid to this lately and further on, I hope, but also in kindergarten level or at primary school, there's more this kind of emotional skills and stuff already, and this kind of self and social skills paid attention and so forth. And hopefully this will be more natural for us that we are that these skills are important as a part of our professional life. So, and I would argue that they are more and more decisive in our profession. So, as I said, it's not knowing alone, but it's really being able to contribute and connect to others. And also now when we talk about this facilitation, it's even more than how can we be helpful to others? And of course, where the facilitation is kind of meta skills and where it's just really a professional expertise and what are the kind of connections there. But I would argue that there is quite a lot such stuff that is connected also to leadership skills and leader roles and facilitation roles that are pretty much well, we could say the same stuff. And now there's one model I'm using, very generic and such, and there is certain skill set that we can argue that if there's some meta skills or just the basic skills. But I would say that this is kind of meta as well. But when we talk about facilitators or leaders, generic or meta skills, whatever book we take, we can see that this kind of self-awareness is there in the middle or in the core, and of course there's quite a bit stuff that is connected to the self-awareness. There is some of those, and we all are self-aware, but I think we can improve pretty much what are the lenses to look at the world, what's our identities, and so forth. And there's massive amount of different tools and books help in this. But one thing I want to pinpoint is that when we talk about self-awareness, being in a bubble, just thinking alone about ourselves, I think it's not very helpful in the long run, because we tend to become biased. but we can talk about self-awareness as an extended or social self-awareness, meaning that, do I know how others perceive and experience me? Am I willing to get feedback? Am I asking that? Because this is now something that we have a lot of hypotheses or ideas that if I do this, then good things happen in a group or socially, but it's not us to decide, it's others who decide that, whether it was a good stuff or not. And if we don't get any feedback, then we might have an idea that, okay, this was a good thing, but others are with different opinion. So being curious about how others perceive us, I think it's very, very important. And if they are aligned somehow, I tried this and others experienced this similarly or pretty much the same, then I think it's a kind of healthy situation. Okay, then other side is self-regulation, meaning that how are we able to keep up, well, in of course keeping our values, priorities, and so forth, and but also I think it's also the being able to be in a role and a position. And when we have been talking about this, how to be in a neutral position as a facilitator and not serving, putting your own ideas there in play first, but then being able to be deliberately in role. So that's one thing. But it's also how we can somehow control our emotional reactions, not the emotions as such, but the reactions and our behavior and being kind of reflexive and present and so forth. So that's something which is strongly needed in facilitation roles, but also in leadership roles, or nowadays whatever role. I think it's helpful as such. And third thing is learning. So I mean, this is also a meta skill that we need more and more, how we can learn from experience. As you mentioned, that this stuff is learned through experience. So and all these, whether it's leadership or whether it's facilitation, whether it's a good collaborative partnership, I think it's strongly experience to learn. And we can be much better learning from our experience and more deliberate as well. And their reflective thinking routines are needed, but also adopting kind of critical stance, meaning that we also probe our thinking, our assumptions, our hypotheses, at least when it's needed. Maybe it's not point to do it all the time, but in a way, in certain situations that we really can have this critical stand. And it was also nice to read what from your experience, about your experience, that when somebody's asking a good question, then we become more aware of our biases or ways of thinking, and that's very, very good way to learn about our own thinking, and that's also part of our self-awareness. Okay. Then next layer is interpersonal social skills. So, and I would argue that this kind of social and contextual awareness is needed as well. So, and which means that there is a generic knowledge about organizational dynamics or social dynamics within organization, power and political dimensions, emotions, and also this kind of culture and cultural processes. But more specifically, we should be aware of our own context, where we, of course, contribute and make impact, but also when we want to be helpful, then of course being sensitizing ourselves about the client's context as well. And it's interesting experience when we go to a new organization, visiting client or just a new organization, that it might feel different, that we sensitize that when even nobody's saying anything, but we just sense that, okay, there's tensions, there is nice vibes or such. The same thing when we are in a meeting room, how people, what's the atmosphere? And it would be nice to say that we have this kind of social sense or contextual sense And some of us are more sensitized to that, and this kind of intuitive feelings, I think they are also telling us something. And as a facilitator, again, that we sensitize ourselves to social systems, what's happening, what's the feeling, what's the atmosphere. And then, of course, it's hard to interpret anything that's just, okay, I feel that there is some tensions. Okay, maybe we should start with some not icebreak, but okay, talking about that what's happening, what's there. Maybe people don't talk about that, but in a way, I think that's very useful kind of practice or curiosity or this kind of data collection kind of thing. Okay, then influencing and building relationship, which is quite naturally taking things as, okay, this is the leadership stuff, but it's really how we make a difference in social situation and how we build at the same time good relationship, because it's not all influencing, all encounters build our relationships as well. And as a facilitator, as a leader, we have to be able to make a kind of plus effects, that there is good things happening in a way, potentially, and there's good traces, good emotional marks afterwards left. And then coaching and transforming, I have put that as a kind of separate skill set from this influencing and building relationships. Of course, they are very related, but this what we have been talking about, facilitation is pretty much having this helpful and emancipatory stance, supporting learning and development, this being able to listening and asking good questions and so forth, and ability to promote transformation within the system. And then finally, of course, we have substantial contextual knowledge, knowing the industry context, and then we have substantial technical expertise, which is quite often the starting point in our expert careers. But what's there in the middle is something that I would argue that more you are in a leader position, more you are in this kind of facilitation, change agent roles, I think this core is important. And we can call this kind of meta perspective, meta skills when we are building this core. And as I said, it's already somehow, but being able to become more aware, more and explicate more of that stuff that's in the middle. So then, if these are the skill sets, in a way, what are the routines? So in a way, routines, practice, habits that enable us to keep ourselves on track, improve our performance, develop our capabilities, learn continuously, and grow as a person. So quite a bit this coordination, learning, reflecting, making sense. We can call those kind of meta routines. How are we doing that? And somehow useful meta routines for change agent is that we keep up our curiosity, deliberate experimentation, experiencing, so that we utilize different situations to learn, and then that we are kind of sensitize ourselves, this kind of reflexivity to what's happening, why this is happening, how I'm adjust my own behavior in a certain moment and situation, and then taking moments to regularly reflect on the experiences, and so it's pretty much being kind of sensitize ourselves in social situations. And then finally, how can we improve? As we were talking about our lenses in the beginning, so it's they are there, and they are quite often implicit, that we have certain way of interpreting a situation, learn, but we don't problematize or probe that so often. But I think it's good to take a look. So how we explicate our personal values, principles, and facilitation leadership theory in a way, and build personalized style and practice. So and that's kind of basis. But then getting as lot as possible experiences, because we learn through those, but not just getting experiences, but making sense, probing, putting ourselves in new situation, using new tools, and and that way we can expand our facilitative repertoire and become more kind of competent and have this kind of self-efficacy that we can face uncertainty. We are not surprised that there is surprises in different situations. Asking feedback, so in different ways, and that's as I said already, the only way to learn how others see our and feel and experience our way of being and collaborating. Then already mentioned reflecting our experiences, and we are building kind of personal theory through our experience. They are not kind of single events, but they are kind of building our basis, and we compare those new experience to our existing theory or concept we're having. And then what you have experienced throughout the course is that when there's a pair, it's much more fruitful in a way, and reflection is more effective when there's a partner to reflect with, and who can ask good question and at least listen. And so if you have opportunity to get the sparring partners or mentors or whatever, so I think this is very, very valuable. And then this kind of continuous path. So committing to that we are never ready in a way, or we can all learn more. And it's not just becoming effective, because this learning is pretty deeply connected to our growing as a person and a responsible agent as well. And so I think that way it's also serving us more than just getting some expertise for our profession. Okay, that was my wrap today. So now I think it's your time to take over.
Yes.
Stop sharing.
Any questions or comments for Jari? They're in the chat or
yeah, that was very quick.
Well, I set up my set.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to ask. Well, even if I continue. Okay, last topic actually, before asking you to look forward, is taking an even broader context than an organization. And actually, I spent today doing two things. I went over the exercises you had returned, but the other one was that I think this was the Future of Jobs report from World Economic Forum was just launched like 2 days ago. So I went through the introduction and looked at the many things over there, because that's a really good example, this report about the larger societal level transformation that is happening. And it's happening globally. So if we look at what the report had, so a couple of things that I picked out from there. The first of all is that employers, so they had something like 800 organizations and companies they surveyed, which employed like, what was it, tens of millions of people globally. Nevertheless, the employers estimate that 44% of workers' skills will be disrupted in the next 5 years. So 44% of the workforce, their skills will radically change. And I guess the word disrupted here means actually in a bad way, so that they need to actually do something about it. And continuing on that, 6 in 10, so 60% of workers will require training before the year 27. But only half of workers are seen to have access to adequate training opportunities today. That's very interesting. Well, again, this is really big picture. This is talking about globally. So enormous skills transformation going on globally on how the workforce needs to reskill and upskill. And the second quotation I think is very important as well, is that this is not going to be equal for all. Only half of the workers will have access to adequate training. So this enormous training need and gap And I think that's one of the big transformations that we all will live in the next 10 years. That whatever organization you're working for, there is going to be this transformation of skills, of learning new things. And yes, that probably needs a lot of facilitation and different ways of facilitating it. And the other very interesting thing about this is the actual skills that the report or the companies who answered the report said. So here on the right-hand side is their top 20 of core skills. So out of the companies, organizations answering that in the study, this is the top 20 skills listed as core skills of their people. And like the quotation here on the left says, analytical thinking and creative thinking remain the most important skills for workers in 2023. Interesting. Analytical thinking, creative thinking. However, there's I definitely recommend you to look over the introduction. Is very easy to read and you get a lot of good points, and then they go deeper if you go further down the report. One of the things that they emphasize that the skills that the companies report to be increasing in importance are not always the ones that are in their strategies. So actually, when they ask the companies which skills are, becoming more important, and look at the strategies of companies, there's a mismatch. So this list is the one where they say that these are becoming more and more important. And also notice in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that they have made these categories, these color categories: cognitive skills, engagement skills, ethics skills, management, physical, self-efficacy, something that Jari talked about, technology skills, working with others. Now, of course, what I did was to look at our course, kind of mark that what are the skills that we have been more or less teaching here. And I put a little dotted line that if it hasn't been in the core of this course, but I think we have, touched it a little bit. So I'm happy to say that we are actually providing quite relevant core skills. Jari, what do you say?
Well, I would add this fifth, curiosity and lifelong learning.
Yeah,
in a way
that's a good
well,
addition.
Curiosity at least has been.
You mentioned it a couple of
nurtured.
times. Yeah, good.
Mm.
But I think that actually it's all the skills 3, 4, 5, 8, 9. Those are super interesting because, listening to you go over the meta skills and the routines, I would say that just look at the amount of meta skills that are being kind of lifted up as being core skills. Or maybe they're not meta skills anymore. Maybe they are core skills now. Anyway, if you're any way interested in this, and I think you should be, have a deeper look at the report. Teaching and mentoring, something we definitely did here, was number 19.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny that you have programming, which is number 20 over there. It wasn't many years ago that everybody, at least here in Finland, was all about we need programming, programmers, everybody has to program and so forth. Anything you want to add, Jari, here? This is fresh from the press, just released this week.
Well, I think that what you already pointed out, that these meta skills, which are kind of which I was talking about, that they become more and more important, so that we have to pay attention that they are not kind of side skills anymore. They are more and more core skills. This kind of adaptability learning, and also keeping up the agency in a way, and also the resilience, flexibility, and agility is meaning that there is a continuous need for adaptation and active agency in this kind of changing world. So that's really the becoming a core more than just being this good add-on.
Yeah. So it's for people like me and Jari, and I think most of you have been really, flag bearing these meta skills for years. It's like our favorite band has become mainstream. So we're kind of, how should we deal with this? We're not anymore the funky hippie people. We are core skills.
But it's good to ask how many lecturers and professors we have on this stuff compared to this. How many hundred professors we are having. Of course, it's not comparable that way, but I think it's still here a little bit side. but
It is.
another story.
Mika is asking in the report, was there a comparison on previous reports? Yeah, it was actually. If you look at it, they were looking at what was the difference between the previous ones and the changes happening in the past years. So yeah, there's more into that. And Anna is pointing out that ethics is an area that directly affects creativity, resilience, and yeah, excellent point. But based on all this and on the report, I'm kind of asking all of you that, like I said, I think there is actually a huge demand for facilitation if it hasn't been obvious at this stage. And if you look at the big transformation in the past decade, especially before the pandemic and the remote working, was the digital transformation, and it's still definitely going on. Now people might be talking more about automation or artificial intelligence as the very front of the digital transformation. But how much is that actually a skills transformation? Because I think we can agree that like I said in the previous lectures, technology change is not a technology change. It's a people change. It's a change in behavior. It's a change in mindsets and all of that. So is it at the end of the day, all of these transformations, digital transformation, remote working? I guess remote working as a transformation is obvious that that's actually very much a skills transformation. And if you think that it is a skills transformation, then the next obvious thing I would say is that you find yourself in a situation that you have the new experts with the new skills working with the old experts, and you need somehow these to work together. You cannot just replace people with new skills. Training is that you probably have to somehow be a midwife in this process, getting people to work together with different backgrounds and different skill sets. Which means, of course, that you're helping others to see maybe the big picture, the onions, all the layers of the onions, the bigger context, the long-term impacts of what you're doing. So the temporal onion again. Or to put it bluntly, helping others to work in uncertainty. Jari, do you want to add something?
Well, I was just thinking that what Anna mentioned about the ethics, that because we are now facing this sustainability issues and changes in a way, the paradigms we are running the world should be changed as well, and so that maybe this kind of ethical, moral awareness and thinking should be involved in that list as well. More that it's needed more and more, questioning why are we doing this and what is a good way to do this, that it becomes, or is it taking self-evident already that we take into account all the sustainability issues or this kind of luontokata, whatever it's in English, but it's interesting to see that maybe it is already in many strategies, and our politicians are kind of lacking behind in a way. In that thinking, but still, I think this kind of ethics and moral and maybe criticality, I would like to add to the list. But
yeah, it reminds me of the old saying that the future is already here, but it's not equally distributed. I think just going back to the slide, just reading this morning and looking at these color codings, I think this is a radical change. That if companies are having these kind of categories for their skills, now that is a radical change that is happening.
That's true.
Words like self-efficacy. I mean, I haven't seen that in any HR skill diagram ever, and now it's in the WEF report. That's big. Tomaya is asking that what is the best way to improve these skills for university students, in addition to this course? Obviously, well, I guess it would be joining, for example, our organization design and leadership major, information networks program. That's what me and Jari do as our day jobs. We're building whole programs to teach these skills. So,
so I guess it's pretty much what we were talking about, that when we have a project courses or more and more of this kind of course where there's experiential parts, that those, because this stuff is learned through experience as well, pretty much, and then you should reflect on. We are still in a situation where there are many courses that we get experiences, but there's no point to reflect on that experience. So missing the learning point. And so I think that it should be kind of added as a view angle to many courses. And then, of course, having also a special course where we can help people to build a frame and becoming more let's say aware and learn learn those certain ways to look at the world, and also boost the agency. So it's not just knowing, but we have to do something differently, and that's the thing I really want to pinpoint. And maybe that's part of the Aalto's strategy, but I don't know how it's really visible in our course level. But so this change agency in a way, at least it's in a strategy narrative.
It is as a room. It's framed in the room as change agents, but I guess it's up to us. And I mean us, not just Jari and me here, but us, all of us here, to kind of make it happen, make it practical, understand what it's actually getting things done. And I guess one of the things we have been talking a lot about in this course is these meta skills and the demand for them. And like Jari has today and previously said, kind of skills that are not specific to certain profession and education. And maybe this is changing. Maybe they are becoming very specific to certain. This is what we and Jari are talking. This is our day job. We're building these into the education of engineers. But the skills are typically something like this, that seeing the big picture, the onion exercise. Remember, you actually need skills and abilities to see the bigger pictures. And reading your exercises this week was all about skills to clarify objectives, or, having the other person ask you questions, and almost by magic, you're clarifying your objectives. Continuous dialogue about meanings, talking, listening, dialogue, back and forth, facilitating all that. Ability to bring different skills together, different people together. Facilitating these diverse experts, diverse group of people to work together. And we all know the situation that it's so much easier and perhaps even more fun to work with people who are like-minded, people who we already know, we're familiar with. It's so easy, you can almost read other person's thoughts, or you don't even have to read their thoughts, because you already know that we're going to play together like this as a team. But the world isn't like that in many places, especially in this huge transformation that organizations are having, new people coming in, existing people being there. Maybe this is kind of what we're hoping also happening now with the degree students and new people from professional lives. You are probably different generations even, and kind of understanding. And a lot of people in your reflections, you actually really like it, that you have different backgrounds. So I think that's a very positive thing. And last but not least, I think all the talk about self-leadership, well-being, not just yourself, which is super important, but also kind of the next level, seeing other people and, arranging and managing your work so that everybody is feeling well. Everybody is in for the long run and not going to burn out too soon. These are becoming core skills as well. Let's see a couple of comments. Would be interesting to have a job ad next to that listing, or a job advertisement. I wonder how many of those skills have we found. Yeah, that's a good point. You can open your local job advertisement section. And going back to the very first lecture, and also what is now represented in the World Economic Forum report, it is that this uncertainty and these transformations, whether it's digital transformation, AI transformation, remote work transformation, work-life skills transformation, and all the uncertainty that comes with it, they actually bring forth that we need more and more these meta skills. I would even say that they are not any more meta skills, just like we were talking a few minutes ago. They're becoming core skills, because we're so conscious and aware of these transitions and uncertainties. And kind of, again, maybe helping you to connect the dots of everything we have done in this course. Like I said, seeing the big picture, exercise 1 and 2 were really about this, weren't they? The contextual big picture and then the temporal big picture. And then your skills to iterate, clarify the objectives, continuous dialogue about meanings. So, exercise 3 was really about the objectives, but 4 was actually really about the dialogue. Paying attention to you as a listener, paying attention to you as a speaking in that pair context. And then, of course, in all of the breakout rooms, what has happened, obviously, is it's an exercise of creating shared meanings in a single breakout room. And then maybe exercise 5, but also 3 and 4, but definitely exercise 5 is, okay, how do you bring these things together? And how do you, literally, last week, what you did was facilitate different experts. And you all had different backgrounds. Maybe there was kind of a happy coincidence that one or two of the pairs, actually, you had a similar background. And if I remember some of the comments, you really enjoyed it. Of course you did, and nothing wrong with that. But most of you, the huge majority of you, were very different backgrounds, and you probably had never met each other before. Again, that was an exercise on how do you do the facilitation there as well. And then the last we haven't talked about that much, but it's the self-leadership and the well-being as well. But maybe that's something I'm going to now add as a final point. Because one of the things, when you go, let's go step back to the organization transformations. Because you can say about that the organization transformation is actually very much the same as a cultural transformation. What kind of values, what kind of behavior, what kind of actions, what kind of culture you are building as you transform into digital, as you transform into AI, as you transform into those skills that are required. And if we look back now, kind of the big trends, or let's say big fashions that have popped up in conversations, we all have heard these, that we should have organizations that don't have hierarchies. There are no bosses anymore. We're a flat organization. Everybody can be autonomous and independent. People are open. People are free to be their best. There's no stupid bureaucracy and no stupid bosses just, messing up with our expertise. And this whole mindset that we all should be passionate people, that we just love our work. I don't know if I have mentioned this, but go to LinkedIn and write the word passionate into the search, and it will give you all the different people who are, listing how they are passionate about this and this. And to me, I think that at least tells that there is this kind of pressure to be passionate about your work. There's this pressure that somehow you're maybe failing at your job if you don't love your job. What's wrong with you? Haven't you found a job you love? Aren't you passionate about this? And maybe you can see where already I'm driving at. Because I think that if you take all of those 3 things, non-hierarchies, open and freedom to be your best, pressuring people to be passionate, you're actually building a burnout hell. That's not an organization that will thrive. That's not necessarily a culture that anybody wants to be in. And that's why I have the bird cages there in the picture. That you are in the kind of this fashionable terms of non-hierarchy. At the end of the day, you're actually building different kind of cages for people. And if you don't believe me, think about the remote working that just happened during the pandemic. How stressful and difficult it was because some of the boundaries were taken off. Mainly the boundaries or the rules that you have to go to a physical office. I think we all enjoyed that for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But at some stage, we saw the suffering that this is mentally actually very tiresome. Not everybody. For some people, it was perfect. But I would say for a majority of people, they had to renegotiate. They had to start building these boundaries that, literally the boundary between work and home was gone, at least physically, because you were working from home. But the point is that if we take away those hierarchies, if you're going out there and screaming, no hierarchies, no bosses, we want a flat organization, how much are you conscious that as human beings, we will always build hierarchies? We always have hierarchies. So don't make the mistake that if you take away hierarchies, that you will think that there are no hierarchies, because we have things like soft power. We have influence over other people. If there's full autonomy, we are very different people. Some of us are very bold. Some of us take advantage of that autonomy in a very different way than others. And maybe that creates a hierarchy. We have proactive people. We have courageous people who just make the most of it. And then we have people who are, looking for safety, who are not that, bold to go forward, and they don't use the autonomy. Now there's a hierarchy for you. And a couple of things I point out here in invisible hierarchies that happen. The most social person typically can have the most power. That's my little, punch on the narcissism, that, the person who's very charismatic, very bold in taking advantage of, they practically start building more invisible power. The other person the problem with no hierarchies is that every Monday you come to work, you need to negotiate your role, you need to negotiate your responsibilities. If it's all a carte blanche, if nobody's going to tell you what to do, nobody's going to draw any boundaries, it's this continuous negotiation. What is expected of me? What is my role? What's my responsibility here? And then, of course, it becomes very unclear who's making decisions here. If the hierarchies are invisible, it's very difficult to see how things happen, who's making decisions. And you can probably see the problems with that as well. And the other thing to really pay attention to is, of course, social pressure. This is another thing we cannot escape because we are human beings. And in a work context, typically social pressure is something that makes us think that what is normal in this workplace? Is it okay for me to stay at home all the time, even though, most of my colleagues go to the office once a week or twice a week? If everybody goes there, that's social pressure. What is normal? Should I work during the weekends? Can I shut down my mobile work phone at 5 o'clock? The other question, big question, what is success? What is considered to be success? If nobody's giving you, good objectives, good metrics, you don't know when you are ready. You don't know whether this is successful. It's that, curse of be your best. Well, how do I know if I'm my best? So you're giving me the responsibility to set these metrics and objectives and goals. And that is actually, then the social pressure comes to, am I enough? Is this enough for me? How do I know? So be aware, I would be very conscious and mindful, belonging and togetherness are fantastic things when it comes to people working together. But what if it is just too strong? What if the workplace, what if your emotions towards the workplace, the togetherness and the belonging is stronger than your belonging and togetherness at home with your family? Now that's an interesting situation. And then just the fact that if you don't have any rules, if you don't have clear policies, what is right, what is wrong, then the social norms, then the pressure will start overruling. And that's a very dynamic and flux process. And then it goes back to the question, who makes the decisions? And then, oh, thank you, Anna. I just quickly saw your comments. One more to go. Maybe looking at us, being critical towards yourself, ourselves. This is what Jari, you talked about so much about the self-awareness being the key and the beginning. So what are my own beliefs? And am I building my own mental prisons? What if, if I am my own boss, what kind of a boss am I? Because if you ask me personally, I'm not as good as boss, as some of the bosses I've had before. I would rather have somebody else being my boss than myself, because I'm very conservative towards myself. And I would like to leave my boss, when the weekend starts, when our vacation starts, I don't have to interact with my boss. If I'm my own boss, I cannot get rid of the boss. So questions, anyway, back to our own beliefs. If everybody in LinkedIn is saying that they're passionate about this, passionate about that, am I passionate enough? How do I know? What is enough success for me? When can I say as a student or as a professional, that's enough. This is good for me. I don't give a damn whether this is good for somebody else, but this is enough for me. I'm happy. I will not change anything. Time to go on a vacation. Just as a practical example, a lot of my, first, second year students we have just make a decision that I'm not going to go and apply for an internship. I'm going to have a vacation for 2-3 months. I think that's a very bold decision because the social pressure is pressuring them otherwise. So I always really applaud them when they make that thing. This is enough for me. I don't need a summer internship. And then the third point, what is your own philosophy about work and non-work? at the end of the day, what is your philosophy? Are you the kind of person that, you know, I try not to be judgmental here, because I think that everybody has their own values, and there are people who really value that, you know, work. It's fantastic. Work makes my life meaningful, especially for us teachers like Jari and myself. This is, you know, this is enormously meaningful job, because we're helping people to, you know, achieve things. So what's our philosophy? When do we stop this? When do we, you know, make the balance?
I think you're much better in that than me, but here I guess it's very, very important to acknowledge that what is really my ideas and my beliefs and how much they come from my environment, and some can argue that everything comes outside, so we don't have our own ideas, but of course that's not maybe so radical, but still I think it's very, very good to think that if I want to do differently, then I have to really put energy in that and tolerate that why I'm doing differently than the norm, certain norm, and that's what we are bound to think all the time, in a way, unconsciously or consciously, but that's really that we are really heavily affected and influenced by the norms, and that's created all the time in social media or whatever. and are we fitting, are we accepted, are we in a way normal or non-normal? That's a very kind of very basic questions all the time.
Yeah, speaking of boundaries, I just noticed we ran out of time for the breakout.
Well, we didn't have this breakout room. I noticed.
Well, okay, just to let everybody know, we're not having the second breakout room. We're going to wrap this up soon. But here's my final slide about this, you know, sermon or rant about this, is that I believe firmly that we do need bureaucracy. We need rules, we need regulation, we need boundaries. We need to have shared meanings. What is work, what is success, what is autonomy? And those are, you can call them policies, you can call them rules, you can call shared meanings, but we need those. And we need borders and boundaries on what individual is responsible and what is not their responsibility. Otherwise, you just burn out in a workplace, which means that we need visible roles. And we need to make the power, the decision-making power, clear in those roles. And they are super important for the well-being. And the book I'm pointing here is a book by Outi Simonen, which is, I think, a great book about this. Unfortunately, it's only in Finnish, but I think it is coming in English in the fall, maybe. And the slogan of the book is that a humane work life doesn't build on self-leadership, that we have just gone overboard with the self-leadership, and now we need to come back and actually start looking at those boundaries and rules and policies that we need. Otherwise, it's going to be hell. Okay, apologies. Somehow I miscalculated the whole second half of the lecture. But that's it. That's the last lecture. Or don't leave yet. A couple of things to go over. Further readings, like I said, I actually added, let's take the annotation away. I found that it's this clear.
And hey, I'm going to post the attendance link to the chat also now.
Yes.
So
thank you, Annika. Further readings for all of you students, but also anybody else. When you get the PDF, those should be links. So, you know, a handful of master's theses on these topics we have been talking about. A couple of book recommendations, Aaron Dignan's Brave New Work, and then Outi's book I mentioned. There's also a link to the report I mentioned. Then there is this online course here at Aalto called Future of Work. So check it out if you're really interested in these themes. It's a MOOC. Then the free tools is next slide. I'm going to show that. So this is actually the year 2020 when the pandemic hit. We got all these companies help us out. And so we put together this free tools and all of this stuff. Maybe it should be updated, but it's still there. And I'm sure that they are still very good set of tools for you for change and all that. Check your emails this coming week. And Annika and Rosa will check if you have undone business, meaning that you don't have enough participations or you haven't, for some reason, we cannot see your exercises. Important now, the course totally shuts down on June 7th. Annika and Rosa's contract will end. Me and Jari will be wherever we will be, but we will not be reading your emails, at least in this course. So please make an effort to do all the communication before the 7th. Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble of trying to get a hang of us. And many of you actually will ask questions about the course certificates. That's actually FITEC. We don't know. We would love to help you, but we can't because we have no idea how FITEC does the course certificates. Or we're just going to mark you in SISU degree students, you'll be okay. FITEC students, I don't really know how it goes. But you'll figure it out. Checklist, attendance form, that's all out and open, like Annika said. You can check out this lecture from the Medium. Course feedback. Let's get the, I have the link over here. Now there you get the link for the course feedback form. We're going to send that in email tomorrow as well.
Yes, and please give feedback. That's important.
Answer the feedback, please.
Yeah.
Yes, that's many times there. There's a slight possibility that you get another feedback from the Aalto University, but answer that as well if you want. Or please do answer that as well. That's how we are rated.
Yes, please.
But this one link, this Google form is for us to really improve this course.
So bonuses depends on that.
Yeah.
Joke, we don't get any bonuses, but
Yeah, I was just saying, you wish we had bonuses.
Indeed.